In his famous 1974 experiment, the marshmallow test, Walter Mischel gave children, 4-year-olds, a treat and said, if you can refrain from eating this treat for the next 15 minutes, we will give you 2. And for decades, everybody looked at this famous marshmallow test and said the kids who had done that had great personalities, and the kids who didn't had terrible personalities. And that's why the ones who refrained were successful and the ones who didn't weren't. But Mitchell said, no, you got it all wrong. These are learnable skills. These are not personalities. In fact, personality does not exist as more than maybe a set of probabilities. Well, we didn't like this very much. People don't like to be told they don't have personalities because we like to be reliable. We like to be able to predict the people that we love and ourselves. In fact, we make a lot of money on being able to predict people. And that's why we embrace all sorts of tests. We sell them to our clients. We embrace them ourselves. We go online and spend lots and lots of money and time deciding which character we are on Friends or all sorts of things. But there are problems. The first problem is that there's actually no construct validity to many of these tests. Stop me for a drink later and we can dive down that hole. There is face validity. I'm Gemini, that sounds exactly like me. But there's bigger problems, and that is that these tests lead to us stereotyping ourselves. It's a path into bias, and not just stereotyping others, but stereotyping ourselves. Why would we want to do that? Why would we want to limit our growth mindset and give ourselves a fixed mindset? It's exactly the wrong path. So enter the world of applied improvisation. As improvisers, we say we as human beings are performing all the time. So stop thinking of yourself as a fixed personality and recognize that you are in an improvisational scene and you can make choices because you're doing it all the time. Now, typically we're making habitual, fixed choices unconsciously. But we don't have to. We can make deliberate and conscious choices to be aligned with our objective in those scenes. I know you're saying, what about authenticity? If I'm forcing myself to make a choice, isn't that inauthentic? Well, not necessarily. Think about a baby. So a baby's crawling along, and then one day it sees you and it says, I want to walk. And you take its hands and you say, take a step, take a step. You don't say, you are an inauthentic walker because you're stumbling. You should go back to crawling. Habit and authenticity are not the same thing. So you can think of improvisation as a gym for exercising new performance choices. You can pay attention and listen by exercising your listening and see new opportunities to listen in new ways. You can think of yourself as a parent before you ever parent. You can imagine yourself as a leader in a new way who shows up with heart when you didn't have heart before. You can think of yourself as the organized one. We did this in the pandemic, didn't we? We were forced into new scenes and thought, oh, wait, maybe I am an introvert after all. This isn't so bad being alone home in my office and not having to talk to people before lunch. When we start to pay attention in different ways, when we start to act as if, when we notice more about the scenes outside of ourselves and the scenes inside ourselves, and accept and build with those new opportunities, when we yes and, as we say in improv, all of a sudden we open up the possibilities as opposed to limiting ourselves with some assumption of how we were when we were 4 years old, just because we did or did not accept the marshmallow. In other words, even if we're old dogs, we can try new tricks. I remember the day when I was on a team designing a training for Apple, and we looked around at each other and said, we're all the disorganized ones. And I said, I'm going to act as if I'm organized. And from that experiment, realized I could start a business. I wasn't any more organized in personality, but I stepped into a new scene and I tried on a new part. So I invite you, what's a new role that you want to take on?